Welcome back to the Reflector channel. We are in the thick of restoring an Astrosystems Telekit 12.5-inch Dobsonian telescope. Let's get right back to it. In the first video in this series, we restored the entire upper portion that's called the upper cage. That included the Telrad, the Crayford focuser, the quick switch filter holder, and of course the secondary mirror, which is now cleaned and aimed properly. Yesterday, I tried to collimate the entire telescope, and unfortunately, I could not do it. It didn't have anything to do with the upper cage part. It had everything to do with the mirror and the mirror's location in the mirror box. Now, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about here in a minute. But since this part's all done, let's go ahead and remove this and put it somewhere safe so that we can work on the rest of the telescope. These support struts are working just fine, but their location is denoted by these post-it notes that we see on here. And unfortunately, a few of the post-it notes have already fallen off. After all, they are several decades old. In theory, these support struts should be interchangeable, but you know, the original builder went to a lot of effort to mark them and make sure that they stayed in a particular order, and it does seem to work just fine with the upper cage. So I'm going to respect his ordering system, except the post-it notes have to go. I borrowed these steel stamps from my daughter's crafting supplies. We're going to make these a little more permanent. Let's go ahead and do that.
When I repaint these, they should look a little better.
All right, so we're all done. I tried to make it very subtle. There's the letter A, and there's the letter A. I didn't want it to stand out and, you know, detract from the quality of the telescope. I think it's time to put this up on the table so we can open it up and take a look at the mirror and the mirror mounting situation. Let's lift it up there. Oh my God, that's heavy. Oh, that's heavy. So here's the mirror box. It's very, very heavy. Let's go ahead and take the dust cover off. Now you may recall in a previous series that we did, there was no way to access the mirror other than to reach in and pull it out. This one seems to have an access hatch, so let's take a look at that. Let me get this protective cardboard out. Now the mirror is held in place, so I'm going to rotate this. And the mirror is held in place, it's not going to fall anywhere, so we should be good for now. Okay, so this is the bottom of the telescope. This hole here has a cooling fan in it. That's about 2.5 inches in diameter, right there. Here's the on-off button. Those batteries are long dead. I assume they haven't been charged in probably 15, 20 years. These three things are the heads of collimation screws. Now, they don't actually work anymore, so we're going to have to investigate the base and figure out if they've broken off where they're supposed to attach. Here's a couple of extra cooling holes, I guess. Now, this whole thing should come down like a ramp. Here's a little hinge. Here's another hinge. And this bolt, if I remove those, I believe this will come down, again, like a ramp and give us full access to all the innards. So I'm very excited to see how this works. So let's go ahead and I'll get a wrench and take these off. Now I have to be very careful with this last one because I don't want this to fall down. It'll smash the mirror. It should just come out. Oh, there we go. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh my goodness. Look at that. All of its glory to be seen. Look at that. Oh my gosh. Wow, that's a thick mirror. That may be the thickest mirror I've ever seen. 2¼ inches thick. I'd like to get this out of here and in a safe location. So let's get these out. Now I will note that these are not actually touching the mirror. They're floating just above it. got little felt on them. What are we going to find when we pick this up? If I can pick it up. This is a very heavy mirror. We have to remove these all the way. Super long screws. All right. I think that's the only one we got to move. Oh my God, that's so heavy. This mirror is incredibly heavy. Okay. I'm just going to set it somewhere safe. All right, let's investigate.
Here you see a close-up of the 3 triangular supports. With a round contact point at each corner of these teeter-tottering triangles, this method provides the most evenly distributed support loads for the heavy mirror. The real mystery here is why there's a 4th support in the middle of each triangle.
These are Radio Shack sealed rechargeable inner cells. Catalog number 23-181A. These are 6 volts, so 6 volts, so we got 12 volts. Okay, so this is probably just a PC fan. Yeah, this is just a 12 volt PC fan. So this just, you put these in series and you get 12 volts to run that. So pretty straightforward system. I'll look and see if these can be replaced or if we should replace them or if maybe there's something better. This is the least of the worries though, because the collimation system is a little bit strange. I'm just not familiar with it. I'm gonna have to figure this out. So the way this works is, you know, for a lot of the smaller telescopes, that primary mirror sits on a ring base. Now, when the mirrors get really heavy, you want to support them in multiple points throughout the back. And if you saw the previous series, you saw that it had a similar way. It had these 3 triangles. It's very common. For very large mirrors, they'll even have like 6 or 9 of these triangles, I think. But these teeter-totter, right? They teeter-totter. The way this one works, I'm not familiar with. So the way that they keep it from rotating is it is attached to this ring right here. Pretty clever, right? Otherwise, these would tend to rotate. The collimation screw is attached to this felt pad. So if I reach through here and turn that, you can see it's supposed to turn. That one's broken. In fact, that one's broken and this one's broken. So let me read up on this. Let me do some research on the batteries and the collimation system. This sling, of course, stretched a little bit. And it's already pulled tight, almost as tight as it can get. There's only about 1/4 inch of play there. That might be enough, but there's no threads. I am going to replace this with a wing nut because this nylon is really hard to get to. And I think if I just put a little dowel in there, I think that'll eat up a lot of space and that'll take care of that problem. But next up, we are going to detach these 2 hinges so we can take this out and work on it without this being in the way. On second thought, I decided that I'd put these bolts back in loosely so that when I take these hinges off, the whole thing doesn't fall down. I'm just going to put this on the nut back here. Yep. All right. There we go. All right. And there it is. Let's put this somewhere safe.
While I research how to fix the support system, let's go ahead and clean that mirror and take care of a few other minor improvements so we'll be ready to go when I repair those triangle supports. First, let's see if the air bulb can make any difference at all. And it looks like no.
All right, so as you can see, this mirror has quite a bit of haze on it. I'm hoping that's just a layer of really, really old dust. And there's these spots that could either be mildew or perhaps signs of previous bugs landing on this. I'm not really sure. We're going to give it a nice, gentle cleanse using the technique that is outlined in the Orion user manuals for their Dobsonians. And it's pretty universal. And I have a whole video dedicated to how to wash these telescope mirrors. And I'll put a link to that down the bottom if you want to watch it. The idea, of course, is that you put a nice room temperature bath of water that has some dish soap in it and a little bit of isopropyl alcohol in it, and you stir it up so it makes a nice little, not very sudsy. You don't want it to be very sudsy, but you do want it to have the cleansing power of these elements. And we will soak this in that for a few minutes to get all this stuff loose. And then we'll take lots and lots of cotton balls and we will slowly draw them across the surface, rotating them once or twice. Or if you want, they highly recommend that you only use them for one stripe because after all, the cost of a cotton ball is nothing compared to the cost of this mirror. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I tend to use them once, flip it over and use it again. But if you want to be on the super safe side, you just use one cotton ball per strip. We'll go all the way across, we'll rotate it 90 degrees and repeat it, all while it's submerged in this tub of water. So I have a whole video that's dedicated to the details on this. So let's go ahead and get started. We got to fill this with water and then we'll add the stuff to it. Let's go.
Astrosystems is still the maker of these telekits, having started the business in 1987. You can buy these in a variety of sizes all the way up to a whopping 24 inches. The company was started by Randy Cunningham, who, interestingly enough, built his first reflector telescope at the age of just 12 years old. You might say that telescope building was in his DNA. Of course, the modern-day telekits have a lot of improvements since this one was built just before the turn of the century. One of the great things about this restoration is that Astrosystems is still in business, and the owner has a massive depth of historical knowledge about these early models. I was able to contact him and discuss how to repair the mirror support system as well as purchase some of the upgrades, which, as of today, are being shipped. Now, the good news is that this mirror is cleaning up very nicely. I'm really relieved and really surprised. Here is the last step where I wash it off with distilled water and carefully get rid of those last remaining water droplets, either using a squeeze bulb or with the corner of a clean paper towel. I think it's safe to say that we don't have to get this mirror recoated, and that saves us a ton of money.
This is the very bottom of the telescope. This is where the mirror box sits in, and you can see the Teflon pads right there. Now this part, of course, spins. It's on nice little bearings down there. We'll look at those in a moment. But what I wanted to show you right now is the wheelbarrow support handles. You see there's the wheel. These are quick attach. These are just eye hooks that unscrew. And on the inside, I'll show you over here. Normally, there's this little wing nut that you have to put on there. But I've gone ahead and I purchased some T-nuts that go into the wood permanently. There's one there. There's one there. I've just fitted those. And I'm going to be gluing those and also putting some tiny little screws or nails that'll keep them permanently in place. And over here, there's the old hole. It was a little bit fiddly, to be honest, but I'll be repairing those and putting T-nuts in those as well. All right, it's the last one. That one's secured. That one's secured. This one's secured, and so is that one. So no more fiddling with those wing nuts. And we now have a finished wheelbarrow attachment. Looking pretty good. On almost all of my Dobsonian restorations, I add a carrying handle right here on the base. Now, I typically go with the cheapest option possible, but I got brushed stainless for this because, well, it's a pretty nice telescope. Let's go ahead and install these. All right, so I want to put the handles here. There's only one problem. On the other side of this wood is a cutaway area. So it's only about 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe a little bit thicker. So what I'm going to do is make a little insert. I've already copied the shape here. I'll cut that out on the bandsaw, and this will go in there, and the screws will go into this sturdy block of wood. I'll go ahead and cut that out on both sides. So here's one of the pieces. Let's see if it fits. It's nice. That's a nice fit, actually. Let's see if we turn it around if it fits better. Look at that. So if you're enjoying this video, please go ahead and push that like button. It means the world to little channels like this. Let's put the other side in too and put the handles on. So I've marked where the holes are going to go. I've glued the piece of wood on. I've clamped it. I've done that to both sides. Now it's time to mark the holes and then drill them. Call this done. Now here's the base. It's pretty interesting. It uses hockey pucks as feet. Now I did that a while ago on the 6-inch telescope that we restored, and it has worked really, really well. And so it's pretty neat to see it being used here. There's this interesting little knob up here. We're going to find out what that is, but let's go ahead and take this off and see what kind of bearings this is using. That's one heck of a bolt. There is a set screw there. I have no idea why that set screw is there. Perhaps there is a extra attachment you could buy for this. But this, oh, there we go. That's coming right off. All right. All right, let's take a look at what we got here. These are the beefiest bearings I have ever seen. This thing spins really, really smooth. And the secret to that, of course, is these really, really nice bearings. Wow. Let's get a close-up of those. Look at that. It's got little bushings on each end. But this is the interesting part over here. Here's the third bearing, right? Now, I suspect that this is a friction brake, a variable friction brake, because it looks like it's tilted at a little bit of an angle. So I would imagine if the whole thing is spinning too fast, that you just turn this, and whatever direction causes this puck to slightly rise up, and it causes friction on the bottom. Very, very clever. I'm really, really getting more and more impressed with the Astrosystems techniques. Now, to help me remember which way this friction brake works, I've added these two little symbols. So clockwise means increasing friction. Counterclockwise means reducing friction. That ought to work. This would be a good time to paint the inside of this with the flat black again. I got a quart of the Rust-Oleum camouflage flat black, so that should be good for all of this. And I'll clean up the outside of this as well.
For many years, I've been using the Rust-Oleum Camouflage Ultra Flat Black spray paint. So when I bought the quart size of the same paint, I assumed that it would have a similar finish. Unfortunately, after painting the entire inside of the mirror box and the base with it, I realized that it had more of a satin finish that reflected quite a bit of light. After investigating, I found out that the quart size had an acrylic formulation, despite the can not actually saying that. The only clue was in the cleanup instructions, where it said that you could use soap and water. In the end, shame on me for not reading the complete instructions.
To show you the differences, I've worked up a couple of samples. This is the quart formulation, which I believe is the acrylic, and this is the enamel version. This is much tougher. And so this is what the telescope is currently painted in, this coating right here. And you can see that it actually, at least in real life, with my own eyes, it's reflecting quite a bit of light. I'd say this is more of a satin finish, kind of somewhere between a satin and a flat finish, but it does reflect quite a bit of light. In fact, let me show you this image of the telescope as it is right now. You can see it's quite shiny. Compare that to what I've been using for years, which is the paint can right here. And you can see it lives up to the name of being ultra flat black. Just ignore this middle part, that's a long story. But this is nice and flat, and I'm going to continue to use this spray paint moving forward. If you look at the cans, they're actually very, very similar. This is the Rust-Oleum camouflage. And for the longest time, they've had this boat that's painted in camo. This can I just got, and they've replaced the boat with a deer blind that's painted in camo. But otherwise, they're very, very similar. Of course, the difference is this one, if you read the fine print, talks about that you can clean it up with, I think, soap and water. That should have been my first clue, but I didn't read those fine instructions. I made the poor assumption of thinking that they would be the same. So what I'm going to have to do is sand all of this off and repaint it with this. Now, I have to give credit to Rust-Oleum's customer support. I wrote to them and they looked into it and they said that they should have the same finish. That's what they told me. And they said as a compensation, I guess, they're going to send me a few cans of this stuff and that'll be great. And that'll let me finish the entire inside of the mirror box and the base. Now, just for fun, if you're curious to see just how black dark paint can be, enter player number 3. And this is called Muju Black. Look at that stuff. That is insanely dark. This is the darkest commercial paint that you can purchase right now. Now you might be wondering, hey, what about Vanta Black? Well, Vanta Black is actually not really a paint. It's a vapor deposition process that's really complicated and you can only get it in the UK, etc., etc. But you might be wondering, why am I not using this on the telescope? And that's because it comes in a little bottle like this. It's 100 milliliters. They say it comes in larger bottles, but this is the largest I could afford because this stuff is insanely expensive. And funny enough, it says, don't become a ninja by using this paint. That's in the instructions on the back. So if they ever make an enamel out of this and make it cheaper, I might consider using it. But right now, it's too expensive, and it's more of just a curiosity right now. But I got a lot of sanding to do, so wish me luck. So I have an update on the mirror cell. It has these 3 triangles that support the mirror, and they teeter-totter. So I wrote to Randy Cunningham, the guy who started and runs Astrosystems, and he gave me some very helpful information. I learned that the person who built this made a slight modification, and it has to do with this nut right here. So here's one of the triangular plates. You can see it's flush on the bottom, but it's got this little recessed part right there. I'm going to put this down. Under each of those triangles is a collimation bolt. You can see it right here. Right, and it's supposed to spin. There's a little T-nut that has popped out because this was set down on the ground on the collimation bolts themselves, which is not a good thing, unfortunately. It actually broke 2 of these. So I'll have to hammer those T-nuts back down in. But this nut right here is held on in a very specific place, and it's done so with Loctite. This nut relative to the bolt doesn't move. And so what happens is, in theory, you take your mirror support plate, which is attached permanently to this ring so it doesn't rotate. You don't want to rotate. So as you turn the collimation screw, imagine that's not rotating, and you turn the you turn the collimation screw and it raises the triangle up and down. And because it can teeter-totter, this can cause the whole mirror to tilt this way, that way, whatever. That's what you want to do, and that's all part of the collimation process. The person who built this, he did a really good job, but he did make the modification. We found out that he put this secondary nut on top. In theory, what this is supposed to have is a tiny little threaded hole on top of there, and a little tiny screw that goes in there and holds a washer. That keeps this whole thing in place down in this recessed area so that this has no chance of ever jamming into the mirror. But apparently with this nut it did, and the prior owner put a felt pad on that to prevent that from happening. But I think that probably was interfering with proper support and also getting in the way of collimation. So that's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to make sure these T-nuts get pounded back down into the mirror cell plate. We are going to have to shorten this belt a little bit, and I'm going to have to thread holes in each of these collimation screws and put a very, very skinny little bolt in there to hold these in place. Well, my cameras are starting to overheat, and apparently so am I. This workshop is getting very, very warm this time of year. I've got a lot of sanding to do, and the next time you see the telescope, it'll have a nice layer of flat black paint on it. In the next video, I'm going to dedicate that entirely to this mirror cell. This mirror cell is pretty cool because there's so much on it. You've got the power pack, you've got the cooling fan, you've got the circuitry, but most importantly, you've got these support triangles here. And I'm going to dedicate the next video to showing how to bring this back to life, even better than new. Hopefully, we'll see. And we're also going to have to shorten this belt a little bit, but we're going to put it all together in the next video, I promise. And we're going to take it out and we're going to test this amazing telescope. Thanks for watching. Clear skies, everybody.